What are we even watching? Welcome back, my delinquents. Today we're watching Online Piracy's great comeback. And you know what that means. Piracy, piracy, piracy. It's time for piracy. As an Australian, I'm all for piracy. As long as it doesn't give my computer like an aneurysm. But let's get into it and see about Piracy's great comeback. I have some theories, so let's do it.
The 2010s were the golden age of piracy. BitTorrent accounted for a third of all internet traffic. LimeWire had more monthly users than Facebook, and the Pirate Bay was the only video store in town where you were sure to find what you were looking for. Hypothetically, of course. The world was slowly switching from physical to digital media, and even people who weren't particularly tech-savvy realized that digital goods could be replaced endlessly with practically zero marginal cost. At its peak, 95% of all music downloads were pirated because it had become cheaper and, above all else, an easier way to fill up large digital libraries that were being made possible by cheap digital storage.
You couldn't get a song without being a pirate back in the day. Not saying how ancient I am, but back in the day. Also, for a rural kid like me, that stayed that way for a long time because buying CDs was, one, expensive, and two, there was no way to buy CDs even in the little town I lived in.
But then, it just stopped. Since 2012, the internet has gotten faster, storage has gotten cheaper, and people have become more comfortable with computers, which should have just accelerated a growth trend. But it didn't. Since 2015, peer-to-peer file sharing has collapsed in popularity, and you might think you already know why. Streaming services like Spotify and Netflix were just a better—
Viruses destroying lives and computers, mainly family computers for some reason.
easier and safer way to access content. And now, as these services have become markedly worse and simultaneously more expensive, piracy is making a comeback. It seems pretty simple, right? The only problem is that's not the whole story. Realistically, these companies knew this day would come. It was just really important that they could pretend it wouldn't.
For a lot of people, they've decided it's time to cut back.
But legitimately, it might be time to cancel some subscriptions, and I'm probably going to have to cancel some.
Some of them I'm not using, and it's just wasting money.
There's so many of these, it's hard to keep track.
I do find it funny that a lot of people, if they have too much money, don't realize that they're spending too much money on streaming services until they lose how much money they have.
That's an adversarial relationship. I don't want to pay people to enter adversarial relationships.
We aim, as I said, for this business to be a growth business for the company with margins that our shareholders will feel good about.
So what really made piracy go away and what's really bringing it back might sound simple, but there's actually a bit more going on. First and foremost, the majority of people actually would like to acquire their media legally as long as it was easy and not ridiculously expensive.
Yep, at some point you feel like you're getting screwed, and that's when you start pirating, honestly. I'm, like, the one I'm probably easiest paying is Amazon Prime because I get a Prime from Twitch, I get my shipping, and I get the TV shows and stuff, and it's not too expensive in Oz. I heard Americans pay like $20 for their Prime, but we pay like $7 here. I'm assuming it's to screw us eventually. But I don't mind at the moment. But, like, I rarely use Netflix. I always cancel it and bring it back after 6 or months to a year, depending what shows they have, because it's just too expensive to justify.
Most reasonable people understand that it costs time and money to produce a song, film a movie, or develop a video game, and the people involved in these projects do need to be compensated, or else they are just not going to make them. Even people who frequent the high seas, so to speak, know this better than anybody else. A survey coming out of Australia at the peak of online piracy found that people who pirated content were actually more likely to pay for it if it was available. In a finding that really ages the study, online pirates were far more likely to pay for movies and music through iTunes or QuickFix. This was because people who pirated—
What the hell is QuickFix?
content were just more likely to consume content overall, and most of them would only make the trip to the Bay if they couldn't find what they were looking for more legitimately. So there were two things that changed after 2013. Sure, there were a few high-profile crackdowns on some of these sites, but even the regulators themselves knew they were just playing a game of whack-a-mole. One of the most downloaded files on the Pirate Bay was the Pirate Bay, a complete copy of the site with all of the addresses that could be set up by basically anybody with some basic server hardware in the event that the authorities took down the original site. But then came along the streaming sites that, thanks to faster internet speeds, could let users watch content on demand without granting them direct access to digital files which could then be copied and shared illegally. The big thing was that these options were just so easy compared to piracy, and so cheap compared to buying songs or movies one by one that it just didn't really make sense to bother with anything else. Nowadays, that's clearly changed. There are dozens of streaming services that are each getting more and more expensive every year. The movies and shows that you watch are being split up over different providers. The services themselves are getting worse by introducing ads and pushing less relevant content. And on top of all of that, it's just not that easy anymore. Even individual TV shows have certain seasons split up over different streaming services.
Now that's absolute villain stuff when they split it up between different services. I hate it so much.
And the first step in sitting down to watch a movie these days is to Google what streaming service has the 1984 release of Gremlins, and if you're unlucky, what streaming service plus what VPN combo will get you the movie you want to watch. If you're already going through all that effort, it gets really tempting to just replace streaming services with your port of choice, because in most cases, it will just be easier. So yeah, streaming services were cheap and easy, which killed the need for piracy. But then they slowly became expensive and terrible, which brought it back. Pretty straightforward, right? Wrong. It's easy to write this whole thing off as just dumb companies being needlessly greedy to their own peril. And while that's definitely part of the problem, there is a lot more to it than that. Music streaming by comparison is decent. There are multiple services, but almost all of them have almost all of the music that you would possibly be looking for.
Yeah.
As a result, nobody really...
To be fair, I use YouTube for most of my music. But I guess since I pay for YouTube Premium now, because I do React stuff and lots of other crap like that, that's probably the only reason I changed over to it.
bothers to pirate songs anymore, which is particularly impressive when you remember that just 15 years ago, 95% of music was being downloaded illegally. Artists have not been thrilled about the lower revenue
Those were the days, man.
they've got from streaming versus physical album sales, but most of them still go along with it because even a small share of something is better than most of their music being accessed for free. This raises a potentially unpopular idea, that it might not be streaming that's broken, it might be the movie industry that's broken. The golden age of streaming was never going to last because it was never meant to last. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why it's really making a comeback. This video was made by iScanner. I was sorting through some old receipts for tax season, trying to remember which ones I still needed to file. And of course, one of the important ones had coffee stains all over it.
You know the rules inside of, hey, it's an ad inside of an ad, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, or comment. I'm gonna burp, oh no. And if you want to check out the Patreon or other videos on other channels, go ahead, it really helps me out in the algo, so we can make more stuff, PogChamp. Let's get into it again.
The text was barely readable. Classic me. That's why I started using iScanner. I just scanned the receipt and it used AI to clean everything up. It straightened the page, fixed the lighting, and even removed the worst of the stains. I could finally read the numbers again, and drop the PDF straight into my records. Since then, it's kind of become my go-to. Whenever I'm scanning documents, notes, receipts, or even something my dog got his teeth on, iScanner makes it super easy to salvage whatever's left and turn it into something useful. It's fast, it works across all my devices, and the free version actually does what I need, including editing, signatures, and storing everything in one place. Check it out with the link below, and make your paperwork just a little less painful. Netflix is the most dominant movie and TV streaming service in the world. It has over 300 million paying subscribers, and unlike a lot of its competitors, it's actually profitable. But from its very first days of online streaming, they knew they would eventually lose people back to piracy. They just really didn't care. And to see why, I'm sorry, but you are going to have to look at some financials. Last year, it made
Math, guys, it's the math. Can't believe you'd do this to us.
$7 billion in net income after taxes, which is extremely impressive. But it still makes it hard to justify the valuation of more than $500 billion. At that rate, shareholders would need 57 years for their investment to pay off, which is not a reasonable bet for a company in an industry that has only been dominant for a decade. 57 years ago, watching a movie looked like this. And in another 57 years from now, it's highly unlikely that we will still be watching movies through the current selection of streaming services. Now, most investors in this company aren't dumb. They know that Netflix can't make their money back with its current structure. What they are banking on is being able to offer a cheaper service that they can charge more for in order to fatten up those margins.
Let's not talk about my margins, by the way. Being nice and fat, that's a nice shirt. Do they make it from End?
Anyway, cutting content, raising prices, and pushing strange features like mobile games within the app are not some surprise new rollout.
See, that's something I really hate, like, especially someone who came back to Netflix after I took a huge break from using it because there was nothing I wanted to watch for like a year plus, and it just was destroyed by mobile games everywhere, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Who destroyed this place? What a monstrosity. It's like, what are they thinking?
They are part of a development plan that the company knew it would have to implement since it started offering online streaming. It would just be a lot better if they could do it without competition. Now, on the expenses side, there is some good news. As technology improves, network infrastructure has become cheaper for the same capacity, which means the actual cost to stream videos to users is getting better every year. Netflix's cost of revenue adjusted for inflation has actually been stable since 2022, despite adding almost 100 million new users in that time. Included in those costs are the aforementioned servers and network infrastructure, but it also includes the cost to license and produce their own movies, TV shows, and games. Another big reason their costs have been improving is because they just aren't licensing as much content as they used to, and that's for two reasons. The first was a business decision to cut down on a cost, especially for content that wasn't drawing in new users. The second reason is simply because they can't get their hands on as many titles anymore, because independent studios have made their own streaming services and want to keep their biggest.
That's true, but I feel like also they did it partly to themselves because it may have been the plan at the beginning, but they were paying for all these IPs because they were the only person around, and then so they got sick of it. As of course they would, because some of them only made platforms because they were getting paid so little for what they had.
IPs exclusive, so they can force users to either switch to their platform or shell out for 2 or more streaming services. Netflix is slowly producing its own titles, but that hasn't caught up to the content they are losing from licensing. So then why does this mean that Netflix doesn't care about piracy? Well, publicly they say they do, of course, but piracy is going to hurt their competition a lot more than it's going to hurt them. If people can't find a movie or show on Netflix and then give up and pirate it, that didn't really cost Netflix any money, because the vast majority of content out there wasn't theirs to lose, and they most likely didn't spend the money producing it. A 2023 paper in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization titled Pirate and Chill found that when movies moved off Netflix to another platform, piracy of that content increased by more than 20%. Now, first and foremost, that's an amazing name for a professional journal article. But apart from that, it showed why Netflix hasn't been too concerned with online piracy. In a now infamous quote from the company's chief content officer, they said that in order for Netflix to be successful, we need to become movie studios faster than movie studios can become us. Piracy that disproportionately hurt legacy movie studios and their libraries of content was not something that Netflix would encourage. But behind closed doors, they certainly weren't too sad it was happening. Another way to think about this.
Imagine people not being sad that their rivals are getting destroyed. No, that's crazy.
Is that obviously Amazon isn't encouraging shoplifting, but it's a problem that hurts their competition far more than it hurts them. Piracy has also been a handy
so why would they spend money to stop it? I get the idea.
Tool throughout the company's history. Back in 2013, it admitted to using data from online piracy sites to find out what was popular and therefore what was worth licensing. Okay, so Netflix doesn't care about the rise of piracy.
It's the same reason why a lot of anime and manga companies don't care so much about fan works, because they see it as a positive that promotes their product in the end. It's only if it gets too huge they step in. A lot of them put a limit on it, like you can only make like $500,000 or $1 million off products, etc. But it's because they see it as a net positive for the show. And so they just let it go. Technically, they have copyright on it, but they don't care. And a lot of companies do stuff like that, where in the end, it helps them more than hurt them.
But what about the actual Hollywood studios? Well, they obviously do, and they crack down on IP theft with furious anger. But they are in a difficult situation. They could send piracy back to the Dark Ages by reconcentrating their content onto a single easy platform. But at the moment, that would probably be Netflix, which a company like Disney would obviously not be willing to go along with after investing so much in their own service. If they keep competing though, they are just going to make the experience worse for everybody and probably lose more ground to the high seas.
Yeah, and as Disney continues, more and more places just don't want to work with them because they have such a bad reputation for their streaming service.
Now, for these companies, this whole fight could not be happening at a worse time. There is a reason why music studios were able to play nice and make their content available just about anywhere while movie studios were fighting to the death. Music is simply much cheaper to produce, and there are far more sources of alternative revenue beyond just directly selling a song or an album. Artists don't make as much from streaming as they would from a physical album sale, but they can make it up in tours, merchandising, and other licensing deals.
And it's almost similar to radio, where you wouldn't make tons by it being on the radio, but it gets it out there, everyone sees it, they see the ranking of it, it promotes it, so yeah, you wish you would make a bit more of it, but it has its place.
On the flip side, movies have largely been getting more expensive to produce, while cinema attendance has never fully recovered from its dip during COVID. Ironically, one of the biggest theater releases of the past 5 years was actually for a music studio with the cinema release of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. In the past, poor box offices wouldn't matter as much, because mid-budget movies could make a lot of their money back through DVD.
I think that also a great point is actors just don't have the draw they used to. Like, tons of people would go literally because they are obsessed with actors. But now it's either a franchise or it has to be good. Like, there's not as much draw factor. Like, the era of that rom-com, like, person, be it a female or male, who people just go to every rom-com they were in because they love them so much, is dead.
These sales. But obviously, that's not really a thing anymore. So studios have put even more effort into pushing their streaming services to eventually make back the difference. It's a bold strategy, and there are hundreds of billions of dollars in market cap at stake. So executives really want to pretend that eventually it'll work out. But if it doesn't, there are some lessons to be learned from the music industry which didn't beat piracy. It just made it unnecessary. The first is that movies have simply become too expensive for the current market. Studios have recognized that people are only going to the
See, that's the thing. If you can't beat them, just make them useless, I guess.
movies for special occasion releases these days because it's expensive, the theater experience isn't that good anymore, and people can just wait a month and watch it for free on one of the streaming services that they were already paying for. Instead of making the whole thing cheaper and putting less of their eggs in a single basket, they have doubled down on producing mega blockbusters. Of the 20 most expensive movies ever made, 19 of them came out in the last 10 years after streaming was already mainstream.
Wait, Force Awakens was the most expensive? Well, that's fucking embarrassing.
These figures also only count the production budget, not the marketing budget. And on the revenue side, the box office doesn't include the share paid out to movie theaters. With even extremely generous estimates of those arrangements, only about half of these releases made their money back. And some in particular, like the Marvels, Snow White, Dial of Destiny, and the latest Mission Impossible movie, are shaping up to be catastrophic losses. So far, studios have been able to justify these flagship productions to their investors by talking about their IP value, which can later be extracted by bringing in customers to their streaming platforms. But that isn't really happening. Customers who join because they want to watch a single movie didn't tend to stay subscribed for very long compared to those who enjoy a deeper library of mid-budget movies or TV shows. I don't know about you, but I tend to take my subscription to whatever streaming service is hosting The Office this month.
I really want to see like an uptake of indie movies again, because there's a lot in the 90s that were just really good, and they're very low budget, but they're fun. And I guess just seeing more getting made of that would be good, instead of these big directors trying to make big budget monstrosities.
These huge productions also put more strain on the business, as these losses have to be made up somewhere, and that is more often than not increased prices, more ads, and worse overall service. Now, I would forgive you for not feeling too sorry for Hollywood studio executives, but they are really in a no-win situation here. The harder they push back against the changing media landscape, the harder they push people towards the high seas. So anyway, now might be a good time to shamelessly plug that these videos are being made available ad-free on Spotify. So if you would prefer to listen in or watch it over there, I have left a link in the description. And if you think it's just streaming services that have been getting so bad, go and watch this video next to find out
podcast of sorts where it's
why making junk makes so much.
Does Spotify allow videos, or is it like a podcast like version of the videos kind of thing? I need to get a better stand. Mine just keeps flipping around. I swear. Okay, guys, that is the end on Piracy's great comeback. What do we think? Do we think Piracy is about to ride the wave, bros? Like, honestly, I have been seeing this coming for a long time. People are getting way more into piracy than they were, and it's just not worth it to do it as legal, as in the cost is getting out of control. You're paying, like, almost as much as cable if you do a lot of the services, and at some point you have to pirate something because they just don't have it. And you can't even buy the DVD on it half the time, because things come out on streaming services before they come out on DVDs even now. Like, I tried to get my nephews a physical copy of one of their movies they really liked. It wasn't out. It was on streaming services anywhere, but there wasn't a DVD out for months, and I was like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? This is some bullshit. And it's very annoying. And as a lot of people say, that like the streaming service problem is it's very easily deleted and hard to be archived if you don't pirate it. And I think that's an interesting and real problem, because sometimes after a point you can't get your hands on a movie if it's not popular enough, and that does suck if you want to watch something that is very niche. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think? And I'll catch you next time, my delinquents.